This is something to talk about, and my name is Reed Price. I'm the director of the Senior Center, and today we have a longtime Senior Center member, Bob Frake, active member, who has been interested in eMemoir, in using technology to capture memories. And so I'm going to hand the microphone over to him, and then I think he wants to start us off pretty quickly here with a little video. So, Bob, thank you very much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me here, and thank you folks for coming and listening to what I've got to say. This is a passion of mine, and I think the best way to start, Reed, is to just start right off with the video.
Nice.
When someone becomes just a memory, the memory is a treasure. So record the memory and preserve the treasure. Preserving treasures is the objective of eMemoir. It is done by using digital communication tools. While digital communication has been adopted in many areas, it has been overlooked in memoir. This has been largely due to the perceived cost of required equipment and the difficulty in obtaining the skill to use digital technology. This is unfortunate because, as this tutorial will show, the equipment can be inexpensive and the skill required is within the grasp of the average person. There are many things that traditional written memoir and eMemoir have in common. Both require planning so the outcome is coherent. Both are based on telling stories. Both require identifying the stories to be told. It is in the telling of these stories the two diverge. In eMemoir, photos, videos, audio, graphics, text, music, sound, and other creative forms fall under the genre of digital storytelling, as compared with traditional memoir that is either spoken or written. This tutorial is for those who wish to produce an eMemoir. For the effectiveness of the producer and to the delight of the audiences, the stories are recorded as modular, navigable websites. This tutorial is comprised of the following sections: planning the story, collecting and digitizing assets to be used, creating and editing digital stories, creating websites containing the stories, and then distributing these sites locally or on the internet. Understanding these subjects provides the knowledge needed to tell your story or that of a loved one, so they will be treasured now and in the future.
Thank you, Reed.
So, Bob, tell us a little bit about how you got started with this enterprise of digitally capturing memories.
Well, early on, a big part of my job in the paper manufacturing industry was communication. And it was all the way from the customer to people within the mill, the mills that I worked at. And getting into the video really helped me with the communication. And I purchased my own equipment so that I could do that. And having the equipment, neighbors and friends would say, "Gee, since you've got that equipment, Bob, would you do a little video of my grandfather or my father or whatever?" These were people that they wanted to preserve basically the essence of that person. And you can do that with video because obviously you see them, you can see their mannerisms, and you can hear them and hear how they speak. So this was something that I was doing, and it grew and grew and grew, and finally it became a small business for me. And we were living in northern Wisconsin. About 9 years ago, we moved from northern Wisconsin here to Bainbridge to be with son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter. And in talking about this, at that time, everything was being recorded on VHS tapes. Remember the VHS tape? And in talking about this with my family, my daughter-in-law said, "You know, Bob," she said, I would not watch one of your 1-hour videos. And in some cases, they were longer than that because people just had a lot to say. And she said that would be just too much to sit down and watch. It kind of upset me at the time when she said that, but I thought about it. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she was right. The way we communicate today is different than we communicated maybe just 20 years ago. Just look at what's happening with the network television programs. You know, they'll run half an hour with maybe 10 minutes of promotion in there. But again, people are not willing to watch that. They want to have control over what they see. They want to be able to do what we do on the internet, which is to go to links, click on different links, see what we like. If we don't like it, we just click again until we find what we like. But we want to have control over what we see. So my training or my tutorial that was referred to in the video, which I'm working with people now to promote on the internet through Zoom and other types of software of that type, are presented in the form of a website. And people say, oh my God, now we're talking not only about video and video editing, but we're not talking about website. This is all very complicated. I'm not sure that I can do that. So in the last 9.5 years, my efforts have been researching products, hardware, and software that are easy enough to use so that it would be possible and practical for the common man or woman to produce a website with memoirs in it. I call it eMemoir, obviously, because it's electronic. Now, when people hear the word website, they immediately think of the internet. And these can be distributed. These eMemoirs can be distributed on the internet. However, before they go on the internet, you have to produce them. And when you produce them, they can be produced in such a way that they can be distributed locally. By that, I mean, they can be distributed on a DVD disc. They can be distributed on a thumb drive. Any type of physical memory device can be used. Now, the big problem becomes how big are these files, or how big is this eMemoir and the files that are contained therein going to be? Because these devices all have limitations to them with regard to size. So another part of my research has been how to compress and still have decent quality and be able to get the story out on either any of the devices that I mentioned. And of course, a DVD is 4.7 gigabytes, but you can get the Blu-ray version, which is about 22 gigabytes. And that's an awful lot of information, awful lot of data. So getting back to the creation, believe it or not, the most difficult part of this whole process does not involve technology. It involves, what is it that you want to see? What are the items that you want to include? Now, for people who are no longer alive, this is usually past videos, home movies, slides, pictures, that type of thing. And they can be put together as a slideshow. And in that slideshow, you can even have movie clips. Now, again, we were talking about the VHS recordings. Now, those are not digital, those are analog. But for about less than $10, between $10 and $5, you can buy a device that you plug your output from your VHS player or from your camcorder, if you're going to use it as a player, and connects into a USB, which is a very common port on most computers, and convert it to digital. And then after it's in digital, you can put it into an editing program, or any kind of a program you might want to modify the content that's in there.
So many people might have those memories in VHS because that was the way they were recording. I also think about people who might have slides or pictures.
That's right.
And so you've thought a lot about how to convert those into some method that can be viewed digitally.
Correct. And that is part of the initial process, which is to gather the content that you want to use. Now, for living people, for example, if you're going to do your own, probably a lot of, maybe even most of the content in there will be you on camera. It'll be like a self-interview, or maybe it's an interview of someone else, or maybe the interview would be of someone that you can contact on the internet. We've had recorded of our granddaughter and son and our son who were living in Singapore, and we did full screen recording of a FaceTime session that we had with them. So again, with the technology that's available today, it's almost limitless.
Yeah, we are obviously recording this very meeting right now, and it could be part of a section of it might be a part of the Bob Frake eMemoir.
Yeah, that would be nice. The other thing that's to consider is when you talk about the content that you would put in there today, we've got to realize what happened during our lifetimes. Okay, we can talk about the atomic bomb, we can talk about the man on the moon, we can talk about all these advances that we've had. One of the big advances that I try to get people to think about is the genetic type of technology that's happened. To give you an example, one of the people that I helped back in Wisconsin was a medical doctor. And his big thing was to record information about family members. What type of maladies did they have? What did they die from? How old did they live? And that was important information. It's the kind of information that they ask you when you first go to a new doctor, and they hand you the sheet and you check off all of the different boxes. But that was very important to him. And today, I was given a gift by my daughter, and my wife also did, to have the testing done with Ancestry.com. And once that was done, of course, they told us where we were from, which we pretty much knew. But you can request to have the raw data. And that, in my case, it's about 3/4 of a gigabyte. And it was downloaded to me. And of course, now I've got that information. If I wish, or I can pass that on. Descendants of mine can use it to find out what characteristics I have in my genetic code that possibly was passed on, that they need to be concerned about, or that they might just be interested in. And as the technology in that field progresses, more and more things can be done besides just locating where your ancestors came from. There's all kinds of services where that raw data can be put in and check for various things. And one of those things is, of course, your medical conditions. What do you have a disposition to possibly have? What is the probability? And there's been a lot of news out on those things. In my case, I paid some extra money, had that done, came back with one thing that was checked off, and it just so happens it was the same condition that was picked up in my the testing of my annual physical. So I've had two sources now that tell me I need to watch out for a high iron in my blood. But as we progress, there's more and more, it becomes finer and finer, more resolved as to what information you can get from those tests.
So Bob, I want to ask you if you've done this with a few people, put together either a website or digital DVD or other materials. You talked about a flash drive. How do you get people to get started on focusing on what might be the main content? What might be the place to start?
Well, I have them do a listing, year by year listing. starting with the year they were born and up to the present time, and then to indicate if they can remember what happened during that year, and then highlight turning points in their life that happened in that year, and then come up with themes. For example, in my personal case, my first one is ancestry. And I did put some genealogical information in, just those people who I personally had some contact with in my life. So my first theme was preschool. My second theme is education, and that's broken down by grade school, high school, college. And then after that, I get into employment. And employment tells, where we lived and what kind of things were done. And then I've got the final chapter is wrapping up. And of course, part of wrapping up is what we're doing right now. I've been in retirement for a few years. And like I said, this is my passion, to get people to do this. When you go to a cemetery, it can be an emotional, it can be an informational, there can be many things that happen. When I go, I have a sense that I'm visiting the dash people. Who are the dash people? Well, if you look at all these tombstones, it'll say 1973, dash 2005. The dash is the thing that I'm really concerned about. What happened during that dash? What happened during those years? What was recorded? Was anything recorded? And in most cases, it's almost blank. It's just a dash. So I jokingly refer to those people as dash people. So
and so you can fill in your dash a little bit. And one of the things that you said when you talk about those themes, you were talking about keeping things short. You could just take one of those themes and think about, what can I put together in that theme? And that's all I'll do this week or this month or this year.
Yeah, I've had people, for example, I was in Wisconsin. I was commissioned to do a video on a World War II ace, fighter pilot ace. And he was a young man from Chicago that went up to Canada when the war broke out in England, signed up for the Royal Air Force. His whole hobby was flying. He went over to England and was trained on some things that he didn't have, like gunnery and so forth. His first day up in the fighter, as other than training, was over Dunkirk. Okay, what a way to start a war, huh? And then he had talked about various planes that were shot down, how easy it was to get some, how scared you can get, and who you had to be afraid of. And it was a dogfight. That was the term that was used. It was a fight up there in the air. But anyway, that's all he wanted. His whole life, as far as he was concerned, were those few years that he was in the military. Now, it turned out to be kind of a sad situation, because even when he was in the Royal Air Force, he was in a Spitfire fighter plane, which he enjoyed very much. When the United States got into the war, he was transferred over to the U.S. Air Force. And because he had some multiple engine experience, they put him in a bomber. And he was, just felt terrible, because he was slow up there in the air. He felt like a sitting duck. He did get shot at. Really couldn't return any fire. And further upsetting him was the fact that he tolerated it, because after the war, he figured he'd be able to get a job with the airlines. And it turned out the airlines just absolutely would not hire these military people. So he was pretty bitter about the whole thing. But again, that was the theme. His whole life was just those couple of years.
Interesting. So I want to make sure that if anybody has any questions or comments, or would like to share their efforts at trying to capture moments in their life, or if they've played around with digital technology or actually done any written memoirs, open up your microphone and share with us here. Hi, Bill.
Hey, Reed. So what would you recommend? I'm thinking about my parents. They live across the country. What's the best way to get started on something like this?
Well, would you do them together, or would they be two different stories?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it'd be two different stories, but probably done together. I mean, it could be done together or it could be done separately, but they would be together.
Okay, well, since they're both living, you've got the fantastic opportunity to interview them, either when you visit them or over the internet. So that would be the main technology that you'd be using would be internet. I'm sorry, would be interview, because as I say, they're alive and they get to tell their stories without having to write it. Maybe, you know, they're not great at writing, but everybody can pretty much speak. And it's even nice because when they do, you learn a lot more than you would learn in the written word. You learn about mannerisms, you learn about dialects, all kinds of interesting things that you probably don't realize on a daily basis that you pick up in a conversation with another person. So that would be gathering that data. How about photographs and slides and home movies and that? Was there much of a collection of that type of material in your home?
Yeah, plenty of photographs to be sure.
Okay. Well, again, now let's talk a little bit about hardware. Okay, the hardware that's needed. Basically, if you've got a smartphone, you have the equivalent of the Swiss Army knife for doing this type of work, because you can use your smartphone as a scanner. You just take a picture of a picture, and then that can go into a photo editing system, of which there's many free ones on the internet. And you can, take whatever you want out of that picture or do whatever you want with that picture. But then what I do is I have them reduced to standard definition. Now, we went through several decades of video with standard definition, and then all of a sudden the industry wanted to sell more expensive equipment. So we got into high definition and so forth. Now, standard definition can give you a lot of information. First of all, the aspect ratio, the width to the height is 4:3, which fits in with 35 millimeter, 16 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and most photographs. So back in those days, before we got into high definition, those were all a common format. Then the resolution is 16 pixels by 48 pixels. And the video that Reed played for you, that's standard definition. Now, I don't know, did you even consider that the resolution there was not adequate? That's what, and that's done again to save space, come up with smaller video sizes. It's done to increase the speed if you're going to have to download or upload that information, and there's a big cost factor. Okay, now we talked about the cell phone being used to capture material, images, and sound. You can use it as a sound recorder. We talked a little bit about how you can get to that information on a computer. Now, computers, again, are all over the place as far as price and as far as capabilities are concerned. I purchased at a local estate sale, I purchased a desktop computer for $5. Okay. It does more than anything that is required to do what we're talking about. I also purchased a camcorder. The one that I had early on, of course, got dropped and broken, for 99 cents. And it does everything that needs to be done in VHS. Okay. But as I said earlier, I can convert that VHS very easily to a digital format.
So it sounds to me like maybe the idea from Bill's question might be start out with the idea of topics or areas that you might want to touch on with your folks, and maybe you're talking to something about before they were married, and then maybe their marriage or how obnoxious you were as a kid. And then and then those are separate. And then those are separate things that you might be able to capture in some of the ways that Bob's talking about.
Yeah, since we're talking about interviews, again, you could be the interviewer and they would be the interviewee, and you would have the opportunity here to kind of control it, because you could determine what questions you want to have answers to before you start it. So that would probably be the first step. Say, okay, what is it that I want to hear? What would be the things that I and my children or anybody who's going to be around years from now would like to hear? How did they react to some of the changes that have happened in our world? How did they affect them? What did they like? What were their fears? What were their accomplishments? That type of information is very valuable. And I guess another reason that I got motivated to get involved with this is because of the value that descendants that I had been involved with, who I helped with the video, the value that those descendants placed on the information. I have a website where I'm putting my information, and it's not getting much attention right now because I'm working on how to help other people do it. But to give you an example, we have still friends up there in Wisconsin. They have one of the families has a son who's a junior or sophomore, I'm not sure what it is, in high school. I talked to them this past weekend, and he wanted to know what's going on with bobfrake.com, my website. He goes out there periodically to see what's there. So to him, it's entertaining and informative. So the young people are into this stuff. There's a huge industry in terms of using this technology in education. The software, and some of the software that I recommend using, is the software that teachers would use. However, the students actually are trained to use that software also. So the things that I would teach people to do for this process really are being used by third graders, fourth graders, that type of thing. So we're not talking about rocket science here. We're talking about things that, you folks, the fact that you're on the internet right now and that we're talking to each other tells me that you probably have more than enough technological experience, I should say, to be able to do this.
You mentioned some pretty good questions, Bob. Do you have a list of questions or a discussion guide that you like to use?
Well, that would come up in the training. That would come up in the tutorial.
Mm-hmm.
So Bob is interested in, actually, if there are people who are interested in having a series of classes, we would be willing to set him up with a Zoom call and maybe have a series. Or you've worked one-on-one with people before too, right, Bob?
Yes, but that would not be my objective today. Okay, my objective today is to find out what you people think of this whole idea. Is it something that you yourself would like to do or feel it's important to do? And would you be interested in some a tutorial in the type that Reed just talked about to get this done? So that's the kind of feedback. That's my reason for doing this today. I'm looking for feedback from you folks. The kind of questions you're asking, that's part of that feedback that I'm looking for.
Bob, this is Jim Hayner. And first of all, I want to ask you where you are from in northern Wisconsin.
Well, I actually, are you familiar with the Wisconsin?
Yeah, I'm from Wisconsin.
Are you familiar with eastern Wisconsin?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Marinette, Wisconsin?
Sure, know Marinette very well. So
Okay.
and I'm sure this is not interesting to anybody else on this call, except for Sheila, who is also a fellow Wisconsinite. But my family was all from Antigo, Wisconsin.
All right, so, very good.
I also, related to what your talk is about here and what you're doing, which I think is great, My wife and my daughter and my granddaughter put together a video from old pictures of my for my 80th birthday, and I have it up on my desktop. And I don't remember what they used, what software they used to do it. But anytime I want to look at myself in my younger years, you know, to refresh the memories, I can run it anytime. It's about a 10-minute film, and it starts from really from my birth and up through my 80th birthday. So I think what you're doing is really, really interesting, and I'd be happy to share it if I knew how at any time to anybody who'd like to look at it.
Okay. Well, it's that you sounds like you already have the basis for eMemoir. If you again, I don't know how it was distributed, but obviously it was practical because you have a copy that you put on your computer. Excuse me.
It's online, and what they did is they just I don't know how they put it together. Frankly, I need to ask them, because it's something that Catherine, my wife, wants to do for each member of the family. So this is what you're talking about is interesting, very interesting to us, because this is something we want to do. We have piles and piles and piles of photographs that are all sorted by various occasion, and this is what they use to put mine together, and we want to put based on what we have here, the same thing together for each of our children and grandchildren and so forth.
Well, that sounds like you've got a basis now. I did a small workshop at the senior center, and it was interesting. The one man that came there, the only thing he really wanted to do was to learn how to get his photographs on a DVD. Another person there, actually, you folks may know her, Ruth. What's Ruth's last name?
Flanagan.
Yeah, she was a scrapbooker. She is a scrapbooker, and she used her scrapbook as the basis for getting the information into the.
So what did you do? Scan the photograph?
What do I use to scan photographs?
In other words, yeah, obviously you're using photographs. You would use a scanner to scan them, I would think, and we don't have the software to do this. So
do you have a smart cam or a smartphone?
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. What was that?
Yep. Do you have a smartphone?
Oh, sure. We have equipment. I just don't have the software. That's all. I mean, I have a Surface Pro, for instance, that I'm talking on right now. So I have all kinds of capabilities. I just don't have it. And my family lives in Spain, so it's a little difficult to communicate now.
Why is it difficult to talk to Spain?
Oh, we talk every day to Spain.
Okay.
With FaceTime, but to sit down and actually take a look at the photographs and put things together and do what they did. We just gave them the photographs and they did it. We didn't do it. And so what my wife is interested in is acquiring the software that allows us to scan these photographs and then assemble them into the kind of story that you're talking about.
Okay, when you say scan the photographs, are you talking about using your phone, or are you talking about, do you have a scanner?
No, we have a scanner, but it's not the kind of scanner that you need to it doesn't have it has the capacity. It can't handle the volume. So it's not a real scanner. It's a part of a Hewlett Packard system. And we know you can get software that will help assemble it, and we just haven't taken it. But it's something that we haven't taken the opportunity to do that.
Well, it sounds like maybe this would be a great opportunity if you were, you guys are interested in maybe taking a couple classes, the tutorial with Bob. You could work through what might be available. We certainly, pretty much any copier will also operate as a scanner these days.
I think the main thing for me would be I have stuff to do And I'm interested in getting something put down, and I do have some things put down because I took a memoir course at the our class at the senior center way back when Marsha Rudolph did it, who did the memoir thing. And so I have information from that. The thing is the software, that kind of stuff, because I'm rather naive on that kind of stuff. So it would be a matter of sitting, you're sitting there, you're talking, Bob, about doing this and doing that. And I've heard those terminologies, but so where am I at that? I'm not there yet. So it's a matter of sitting down, and I would be interested as a person just to learn how to do that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I can tell you the software that I use and I recommend is free software. And it's used to create the web pages. It's used to dress up or modify the contents, whether it's photographs or sound. And it's free. People don't realize, but we all have thousands of people out there working for us. Thousands.
So the idea that Bob and I were talking about was that in a couple of weeks he might hold 2 or 3 classes, and we'll put this video out. And those of you who are interested might have a sort of dig in and have an actual one-on-one discussion, 1-on-4, 1-on-5 discussion about how to make this happen. Bob, I really appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Bob.